Welcome to the Real Advisor Podcast, TRAP, Trap. Please follow us and join in the conversation on Twitter @Advisor Podcast, where you can suggest ideas and themes you'd like the Trap team to discuss. Also remember to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel and leave a 6 out of 5-star review on iTunes. Doing all this really helps us, which means we can do more to help you. Now let's head over to the studio for the latest pile of Trap.
Yes, indeed. Welcome back, dear Trappists, to what many people are calling episode 20 of the Real Advisor Podcast, TRAP Trap. My name is Lick Ninken, and joining me as ever are the 3 other horsemen of the apocalypse, Carl the Voice Widger, Alan the Storyteller Smith, and Andy Hart. Now, gentlemen, we have a show packed full of absolutely nothing, so let's start unpacking it from the get-go. Mr. Hart, give us a low-energy reading of 3 more reviews.
Fantastic. Over to me. Thank you very much, Lick. So the first review comes from James Beck, good friend of mine, good friend of people on the show, I believe. It's entitled, Grab Your Sports Direct. Am I going to have a listen? 5 stars. Lick, Ninken and the gang share their wisdom about all things financial planning with some humour sprinkled in for good measure. Well worth a listen. Next up is from Sharon Sutton, again a good friend of the show. 5 stars. Nice. Good to hear. We are on the right track. That's if these guys have it right, of course, with a smiley emoji. And the Irish perspective is useful to hear. Only criticism is 4 blokes MPS, which stands for, I believe, male, pale and stale. I could be wrong. The final review, which is the hit of the whole fruit, Hands the Hunter, surprisingly good 5 stars. When I heard that 4 of the most egotistical financial advisors on Twitter were starting a podcast, that does include you, Carl, I thought, it will likely be a Poundland all in. I was surprised when I learned it was full of practical advice for fellow financial advisors, and the undercurrent of loathing and acrimony amongst the hosts gives it an edge worth 6 stars. Back to you, Lick.
First of all, that is a brilliant review, isn't it? That's a bit. He's really got the essence of the whole thing. What did he say? The undercurrent of loathing and acrimony.
It's not brilliant. It's just accurate.
Yeah.
Very good.
But that's
listen. Talking about that. Go on.
No, I'm just saying, people's persona on Twitter is very different to when they meet you in real life. So people do have an opinion of people via Twitter, and then they hear them in a podcast, they see them do a talk, or they meet them somewhere, and then they sometimes change their mind. Over to you, Alan.
I just wanted to say, just something funny happened last night. We've got a new recruit in the company. Shout out to Olivia, just joined us literally a few days ago. And she's come from a different background, which I think that's interesting in and of itself. She used to work for Amazon in logistics, so we could probably learn a lot from her. Anyway, so she hasn't been in our industry, in our profession. And I was chatting to her yesterday, and I said, well, in order to get up to speed and understand some of the sort of topics and the issues of the day, I said, I co-host a podcast called the Real Advisor Podcast. And Olivia says, oh yeah, I've been listening to it. I've listened to a lot of it. I thought, that's really good. That's what do you think? And she says, oh no, I'll tell you who's your biggest fan. I said, who's that? She said, my dad. And I said, oh, does he work in financial services? He says, no, he's in telecoms. He said, he just likes the banter. I thought, oh my God, that's funny.
It's insane. Okay, let's give this show some a timestamp with some topical tidbits. Just before the show recorded today, I saw in my inbox that we've got yet another email from the FSA, a financial resilience survey. I'm now of the view these are sent out to test our financial resilience. God knows how many man hours are wasted doing these things, but that's coming to you, dear Trappists, if you haven't got it already. Alan Smith, timeline charts 2023. A quick summary of these, please.
Yeah, very quick. Abraham and his team at Timeline produce once a year a series of, I think it's about a dozen charts and graphs looking back over sort of 100 years or so of data. And they're interesting, they're informative, and I believe they can be used in client presentations and client communications. And I just wanted to highlight them, put a link to them in the show notes. There's an interesting video where Abraham, in his inimitable style, explains what the charts are all about. But well worth taking a look. But I know that from past conversations, Nick says if you use charts you're a loser or something. Nick, you don't really believe in using charts and graphs during client communications. Is that right?
I think they're a crutch for weak advisors. You have to use the odd graph, but I think people that use them, just blind clients with graphs are, I do. I've always said that. I think it's a weakness. Yeah, it's a weakness. You're not trying to convince anybody of anything. If you're trying to convince people with graphs, you've lost the battle already. Back to you, Alan, with your quick summary of the timeline charts.
That's it. I've done it.
Excellent. Right. Well, that's a nice segue there from timeline to Mr. Hart's topical tidbit, because Mr. Hart wants to talk about Abraham's Advisor 3.0.
I'm a fan of carefully crafted vision for client meetings. Moving on. So, I believe last week, if that's the right sort of timeline in when this has been released. Yeah, following on, we're giving Abraham 2 points here. I mean, this is easy. He's doing well here. So me and Alan went to his conference last week. I believe Abraham's put about 5 or 6 conferences on different types of themes. So fair play for him to continue to come up with new themes and ideas. But yeah, it was called the Advisor 3.0. Fantastic venue, albeit a little bit hard to find, but once you find it, it's cracking. Good mix, good short talks, some fireside chats. But the people in the room, it's always the people in the room, isn't it? So it was very sort of, light-hearted, good-spirited. The sun was out. It was a cracking day. Alan, you were there. What did you think, my friend?
I would endorse exactly what you said. There was... Seth Godin was a speaker, and I'm a fanboy of Seth. I thought he was just wonderful. Every word he says to me is poetry.
Yeah.
I thought Karen Brady was great as well. I don't know much. I know, Nick, you might be surprised about that. I wasn't expecting. I'm not a fan. I don't watch The Apprentice anymore. I don't really know too much about her, but I thought her talk was really good. It was inspiring and positive. And but as you say, Andy, the sort of the wisdom, the energy in the room, around the coffee shop, the coffee machine, and inevitably in the bar afterwards. It was just this community, and I think this is all. Ken, we've been out of lockdown for a while now, but it seems that we're really sort of getting our mojo back as a community. There was just some positivity in the room. The place was buzzing, lots of conversations spinning off here and there. So I remember waking up the next morning with a mild hangover, but a warm glow of positivity about this, this amazing profession that we're all proud to be part of. So it was a great experience.
Great stuff. Anything else to add to that, Andy?
I wrote about 10 different notes of things to do and actions to take, which is very rare for me. I normally go to conferences, and if I write down one thing, it's been a good day. So I wrote down about 10 things. And the good thing about it is I'm even like watching a talk by fellow financial advisors, and they're saying something, a key point, but then it's led to something else in my mind. So I'm not even writing down the key point they said. I'm writing down something else. So just being there live, sitting in a room, a live room, rather than everything via Zoom, your brain just starts, thinking in all different directions, which I think is fantastic. So that, again, is the whole value of the conference format. So well done to Abraham and the team. It's very, very well organised. As a fellow conference organiser, I know how hard those things are to put together. So, back to you, Lick.
Very good. So, well, actually, it's back to you, Andy, because the next topical tidbit is a perennial favourite of yours, the Times, or is it the Sunday Times Rich List?
Sure, I knew it was back to me, but God forbid I did 2 in a row without the chairman chipping in the meantime. Okay, over to me for the Rich List. So I've read the Rich List.
Get on with it. That review was so accurate.
The loathing scale is already at max.
Okay, so very quickly, so the Sunday Times Rich List was released last weekend on Sunday, actually, and I actually was in Centre Parks with my kids, so I ran down to the local supermarket. I ran down to the local supermarket. The Sunday Times now is £3.50. I subscribe online, but I bought the physical thing. I pulled the richest out of it and just bought that for £3.50. Anyway, I've read it cover to cover from sort of the age of 10. I remember my dad first gave it to me. I love reading it, but for me, I think a lot of the value is in the later numbers. So 100 plus. That's where you find the real entrepreneurial journeys. I mean, we're all aware of the sort of James Dysons, the Bransons, the sort of well-known entrepreneurs. But I like reading about the odd businesses that have done absolutely fantastically. So yeah, the Sunday Times Rich List is something I read frequently.
What's the minimum entry level to be in this? Is it 1,000? 1,000 people. So what's number 1,000? You don't know.
I think it'd be something like 300 million. That's just me thinking
Okay, listen,
off the cuff. Anyway, let's move on from it. He's stressing out, the old chairman.
Right. Okay. Mr. Widger, you've got some negative news. Tell us about this court thing.
Well, it seems in Ireland we're in the eye of a storm in terms of news every single week in the Sunday papers about various geared property funds or loan notes or solar panel businesses and all this kind of stuff going pear-shaped. And last week, 4 directors of CHC, so Custom House Capital, who were kind of a geared property company back in the mid 2000s, were jailed for fraud. So it was very interesting to see. It's the first time, as far as I'm aware, of white collar crime guys being caught and jailed, actually. So what they were doing was an absolute disgrace. And there's other stuff, I think, coming down the road. So I just think it is reassuring, finally, for people who do serious fraud to actually get the punishment that they deserve. They're up for appeal at the moment. I'm only telling you what's been in the papers, what's been reported. But for me, finally, it seems like, I know in the States, like, this stuff happens all the time, but we've seemed to hear, I don't know about in the UK, but here it seems to be very light touch, very soft touch in terms of punishments. But there's hefty punishments. The head guy was jailed for almost 7 years. So serious sentences handed down, and hopefully it'll be a deterrent for people doing bad things with investors' money going forward.
Yeah, I think it's obviously, it's unfortunate it's ended up in jail sentences, but I'm glad it has ended up in jail sentences. And your point is well made. White collar crime here, the perception is people tend to get away with it. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. I certainly know in your neck of the woods, Carl, in the early mid 2000s, property was like the thing, wasn't it? And then of course you had the credit crunch, the banking implosion, whatever you want to call it, and it left a lot of people in a lot of strife. And
there's one thing in investments going wrong, okay, and people understanding what they were going into, and the investment didn't work out. There's another thing, people fraudulently putting money into places they shouldn't have put it, or not where they said they were going to put it. And I think that's the crux of the crime here. So, they are two different things for sure. But, it's good to see that there's heavy punishments now being handed out, and that's a precedent now. So, hopefully that will deter any bad behaviours going forward.
Okay, well done, the Irish authorities. Okay, and the next topical tidbit is also you, Mr. Widger, the currency. Sinead O'Sullivan.
Yeah, the currency is an online kind of business news app, I would say. It's absolutely amazing. It's behind a paywall. It's definitely the best subscription that I subscribe to. I would urge every Irish financial advisor who's listening to this, and anybody else in Ireland, to subscribe. It's absolutely amazing if you're interested in business, and most of it's business stories and how businesses have succeeded or whatever. And my favorite writer then in the currency is Sinead O'Sullivan. She's absolutely amazing. You can follow her on Twitter. But she's recently started The Context, and The Context is basically an online book club. And the reason I love it is we often amongst ourselves ask, right, I'm going on a journey or a plane journey or whatever, what podcast or what book should I listen to? And it's, they're kind of typical business books or, self-development or whatever. This is Sinead's recommending a number of books that you wouldn't definitely have read before. Now, I'm putting them on Audible, as you know, but I'll talk in the Culture Corner about the book that Sinead, the first book that she recommended, which I listened to and I just devoured. It was just awesome, and definitely not a book that I would have listened to before. And I just thought, talk about innovation, an online book club. So basically you read the book, you have a couple of weeks to read it, and then she does a podcast with the author. So it's awesome. Yeah, really, really good. And aside from that, Sinead's writing is always brilliant. So I highly recommend Sinead O'Sullivan.
Okay, great. Is there a link to the currency in the so-called show notes?
Of course there is, Chairman.
You're a good man, Wodge, despite what they say about you. Okay, the next topical tip. Oh, God, this was painful. Yeah, the Stig and his God, Alan, you just talk about it quickly.
Yeah, it was painful. This was in the weekend papers. We all know that a lot of the newspapers, the Times does it, I think the Mail and Sunday, a bunch of them all do this, where they ask a high-profile person or a celebrity, there are sort of questions about money and how do you invest your money? How do you save? Do you like pensions? Do you invest in property? They ask them all these questions and what was your biggest earning payday and all that sort of stuff. And I just saw, and they're always pretty tragic. Honestly, they're always pretty bad. Bearing in mind, all these people are, relatively high profile, presumably high earners. They are financially illiterate without exception. But this one really took the biscuit. This was the guy, obviously it's public information, you can go and check it out. The guy who played the Stig, if everyone was a fan of Top Gear, the Stig was a motor racing driver. I think his name is Ben Collins. They asked him all these questions. Do you invest in this? Do you invest in that? So he says, pensions, I don't go near pensions because, and it's quite interesting actually as a member of the public, he said they always change the rules about pensions, which is true. It doesn't mean that you should avoid the tax efficiency of pensions. So I never touch pensions. He said, on investments, once I invested, a few years ago, I invested in a fund of a high-profile investment manager, which I'm guessing was Neil Woodford. He said, and it fell by 97%, so I'm never investing in that again. So that was another error. He said the best investment was investing in wine. I bought a case of, Rothschild's, Lafite, whatever it was, and it doubled in value over a few years. And I thought, you did well not to drink it, and he sold it over a few years later. What else did he say? It was just a checklist of every mistake you could ever make with your investments and with your money. And I just thought, God, you assume that high profile, high earning people are well advised. They've got a sort of army of really smart people around them telling them what to do.
It's the opposite.
Well, this guy doesn't. And I don't think any of the others do. It's the opposite. It's nuts. It was just, and it's kind of, to me, I just thought that's representative of just, I suppose, a member of the public who knows no better. Everyone needs to accumulate and save for their old age or whatever. And this guy is just doing, if you could have a checklist of the opposite of things to do, he's doing every single one of them. Incredible.
Yeah. Indeed. Human nature is a failed investor.
Yeah, just on that. Yeah, money and wealth certainly doesn't equal literacy. Financial illiterates hate pensions and they hate the stock market. Hence we're here to continue to do our good work and save, clients from the financial darkness. Over to you, Lick.
Thank you very much, Andrew. Mr. Widger, your firm is recruiting.
We are indeed. So after our MBO has settled in over the last couple of months, we've decided to embark in the next phase of our growth strategy. So very excited to announce that we are recruiting up to 6 positions at the moment. So a lot of the focus there will be on our Dublin office and building out that office under Paddy Andrews. So I have a link in the show notes. We would absolutely love people who want to do real financial planning to come on board with Ireland's best financial planning firm. So please do click the link. Please do apply. And I look forward to talking to you all.
Just the 6 positions, Carl.
Don't challenge that point, Andrew.
What's the sponsorship terms for this? Are we sponsored by Metis Norway?
I was going to say, is he paid for that advert?
You are now.
Recruitment out. Wow. Yeah. That's the whole reason why he's come on this show. It's taken
Mr. Smith,
20 episodes.
Mr. Smith, do you want to talk about Vanguard target date funds or not?
No.
Okay,
no.
Right. But you do want to talk about a workshop. You do want to talk very quickly about a workshop.
What did you say, Andy? Yeah,
we'll talk about target date.
Target date funds. We'll come back to that. Yeah. As we know from past conversations on this, I've gone down the AI, artificial intelligence rabbit hole in a significant way. Mr. Hart's kind of with me as well, to some degree. I'm the day this podcast goes out, I will be speaking at a workshop, God help me, about the implications of artificial intelligence on what is generically called consulting businesses, which we're consulting companies. And I've spent quite a lot of time trying to understand the impact it's going to have. And there's no question, everyone can raise their eyebrows and stuff, but there's no doubt whatsoever of the impact that this will have on all of our businesses, and it won't be like other things in the past, like the internet and all this stuff. It won't be over the next 10 years. It will be over the next 10 months. So we, in a sort of collaboration with a few other people that I've known from the past who are the real experts on it, the guy called Piers Linney, who's an ex-Dragon's Den dragon entrepreneur, and another guy called Alok. We're running this program, as I say, it'll be out today if you're listening to this the day this podcast comes out. But because there's been so much interest from financial planners and advisors, we're going to run another session I don't know, in a couple of months, we're going to look at the dates that are available, and we'll post information about it. Because I think particularly if you're senior or you're running a financial planning company, it would be absolutely worth your time, worth your while to spend a day just chewing the fat, looking at the opportunities. There are a ton of challenges. There are an amazing amount of opportunities. And I think it's now time to collaborate, get together, discuss them, because there's going to be winners and losers in this whole, complete and utter change that's going to happen over the next, few months and definitely a couple of years. So I'm just flagging that up, and I'm going to mention something else later on in Culture Corner. Over to you, Lick.
Just following on from that,
very
Alan.
much.
Just following on from that, and the AI situation, there's a lot of talk about it now, certainly in the financial press, and there's also in the sort of mainstream press. And whenever they ask people what professions do you think are the most vulnerable to AI, financial advisors are quite high up there, and so are investment managers. I believe as an insider, it's going to be such a benefit for us and our firms. I don't believe it's going to limit the amount of clients that seek financial advice. I think we're still going to get as many clients as we've always got. I just think the way that we're going to then interact with them and sort of service them on an ongoing basis is going to be a major benefit for our firms. So, yeah, I am really excited about AI.
Look, the whole...
Go on.
So, yeah, in my experience, all the changes play right into the hands of all of us on this podcast and most of our listeners. We're small businesses, so we're dynamic and we can execute things quickly. We can take advantage of things. And we are, of all the sort of component parts that make up a financial planning experience, which is things like data analysis, number crunching, cash flow modeling, investment management, all those sort of stuff. Let the bloody robots do that all day long. We're at the other end of it, which is behavioral coaches. Yeah. And yes, you will absolutely, you have that exists already, and that will get better and better. And you could have a financial planner coach in your pocket on your phone. But I think we're a long way off people not wishing to engage with another human being, look in the whites of their eyes, shake their hands, and really understand that. So I think our emphasis on that exclusively human interaction is going to play right into the hands of this, and we'll get the robots to do pretty much everything else. But so therefore, the value of the cash flow, the investment management, is rapidly going to go to zero. And unfortunately, 90% of the financial planning community, that's their value proposition. So it will be interesting. But I think it's really good for firms like us.
Yeah. Back to you, Nick.
It's done.
Okay.
It's gone.
All right. Okie dokie, thank you. So, as we announced, I think it was in the last episode and via social media, The Voice is going on a family holiday to the west coast of the USA, and he is not around to record the next episode. He wants to be fully present with his family. That's the excuse he's given. We all know, dear Trappists, that getting Carl to work the tech from Limerick is a miracle. It ain't happening over the Atlantic, is it? So we have a guest host for episode 21, and I'm pleased to announce who the guest host is. Before I announce the guest host, this is skillful, isn't it? Just teasing people here. Just to say, we had a really good response to this. We had over 20 people, 20 mugs saying they wanted to do it. So, for the 19 or 20 people that aren't going to be the next guest host, you are in the hopper, and your expression of interest is greatly received. Thank you so much. It's not a slur on you or anything like that. We just had to pick somebody from the 20. And the person we've chosen is a young financial advisor from the northwest of England, Amelia Powell of Premier Wealth Solutions. And I think she's going to be a great guest host for that next episode. Something I didn't know, actually, but she's a PFS New Professionals Officer, looking to support those new to the financial services industry. And so we're going to have a young voice on the show. The Trappist reception seems to be really strong from younger advisors, sort of newbies to the profession who soak up the gibberish that we spout out. So it's Amelia Powell for the next episode. And that's the end of that. Okay, final topical tidbit. One of our more rabid fans. We have some raving fans, which is great. It's amazing how much support we get. And this guy's Philip Donnelly. He's on Twitter as @PhilDouglasDon. He's doing the 100-mile ride London cycle thing on the 28th of May, which is a couple of days after this episode comes out. He's raising money for Great Ormond Street Hospital. I'm sure most people know what Great Ormond Street does. It's for children and children who aren't very well. So it's a really good cause. Anyway, there's a link to his Just Giving page in the so-called show notes if you choose to donate or not to that. But there's the boost for you, Philip. Hope it goes well. Okay, I think it's time for us to move on to the meat and potatoes. Do we not think it's time to move on to that? We've done it all, haven't we?
Yep.
Right. So in the last episode, we talked about the initial discovery process. The how do you pitch it? How do you outline your value proposition to prospects? Because they are prospects. Because we're always prospecting and we're always selling. Whether we're financial advisors, whether we're whatever profession we're in, whatever we're doing, we are always selling ourselves. And that was the last meeting. So assuming you've gone from the discovery meeting and you vetted the clients or vetted the prospects, remembering that you are vetting them, they are not vetting you. Assuming they've got through that initial filter, you're now on to the first planning meeting where you've got all the information, all the financial stuff. More importantly, you've got all their values and goals and aspirations that are going to be funded by the financial stuff. And now these poor saps are coming to you absolutely petrified for this initial planning meeting. They still don't really know what you do. They're probably too embarrassed to ask too many questions. How do we get this thing going? And I think, Mr. Hart, you're going to lead off with the initial planning meeting, meat and potatoes section of episode 20 of Trap.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Nick. That was a great intro. So yeah, I call it a strategy meeting. So that's the first sort of point to note. I generally don't have all of the financial data from the client. I'm happy to build it live with them, but I do let them know that we need to have all of the financial data to hand. We're in 2023, so obviously I've been doing most of these via Zoom, which I'm totally comfortable with. So again, you've got to be on top of your tech. However, I've done a couple of recent strategy meetings live. I way prefer the live strategy meeting. Large screen, comfortable chairs. I've got a whiteboard that's, ready to go to explain stuff as well. I'm comfortable building it live with them, as in they come with all of their financial data on laptops or physical paper, or they've got it live on Zoom. Because this is Trap, we can get into like the specifics of it. So I use Voyant financial planning software. So again, let's just focus on that. But whatever you use, it's a similar sort of process. I might put in there boring stuff like dates of birth and stuff like that, but I do want it to be very much live and collaborative with the clients. So I've got basic stuff like date of birth. The first point I generally enter into my financial planning software is the lifestyle expenditure. How much, I ask my clients mostly monthly questions. So if you were to retire next month, how much monthly, expenses or monthly income do you require to live a dignified and comfortable retirement? Once we've got that number, keep it simple. Let's say it's $5,000 a month. That'll be plugged into the system. $5,000 a month, $60,000 a year. We then have a black line running through the financial plan. Let's say they're both 60. Keep it simple. I kill them at 100. So we've got a 40 years rising cost of living. And that's their lifestyle costs. I keep it in nominal terms, so it goes up from the sort of left to right of the chart. I then sort of say to them, this is the sort of problem that we have. We now need to, build your financial plan into this with the various different incomes and assets that you have. I spend a lot of time on the timeline page, and I say, look, I'm here to help you with anything that requires time, money, and planning. And initially, I just put a few markers on the timeline on the sort of chart. Basically, when they're going to potentially die. Again, that's my first guesstimate, and I always kill my clients at 100. So that's my first cautious assumption. I'm assuming the money needs to last longer than it potentially is needed for. I then put in their retirement goals or retirement points. I rename it F.I.D, which stands for Financial Independence Day or Financial Independence. I then put anything else that I know, sort of final salary schemes. If they've got kids, anything linked to that. And initially, it depends on how future focused and engaged they are. Whereas the initial plan might be, quite bare. There's not much going on. But the more involved they get in the process, the more that they realize the capability of me and the software and what we're trying to do. They then start throwing in a lot more, goals and sort of milestones and markers that we're trying to achieve. I then, again, sort of conscious of time and other people chipping in, I then build out I layer their financial plan with the various different income and assets that they've got. And whilst doing the strategy meeting, every point is discussed. So I'd say, right, where's this pension? What's going on there? So, right, I've got a pension at work. I'm paying that much. I'm doing this. Do you know what funds it's invested in? No. Okay, fine, move on. I don't get into the really nitty gritty, but by the end of it, I've got a financial plan and strategy built out. I call this their financial master plan. This is version 1. It's live and collaborative. We'll update it every single year. The whiteboard's normally got a load of notes on it of all the assets that they've got, what we're potentially going to be switching and transferring across, what the initial fees are going to be, and the ongoing fees. So by the end of it, usually about an hour and a half, sometimes it's a bit longer if there's a bit more detail to it. I know their financial situation inside out. I know their financial plan, their aspirations, what they're trying to achieve here, and the dynamics between the couple. We've got everything sketched out as best we can, and we've got a bit of a sort of the next sort of jobs to do in terms of transferred assets and move things across. So that's generally where I am with it. I'm very happy building it live collaboratively with clients. I've done hundreds of these over the years. I've been using Voyant financial planning software for 13 years, training advisors for 10, 11, 12. I'm totally in flow when I have these meetings. And the trick with these meetings is to have a 2-track mind. So you've got one track on the client, so Mr. and Mrs. Client, what's happening, what's going on, and then you've got another track on the financial planning software that you're using, and they both need to be independent tracks. Yeah. If you've just got one track on the couple, you then can't think about the software. If you've got one track on the software, you can't think about the couple. So that is the key skill that financial planners that want to build plans live and collaborative with clients need to have. I know that's just how I do it, of doing this for many, 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 many years. Other advisors do different things, but that's how I do it. So that's my starter for 10 in relation to how I run my financial strategy meetings. So who's next?
I think I'll jump in here maybe, and then we'll go to Alan and then Carl. Interesting points there. And I know, Carl, when we come to you, Carl, you manage the running of the meeting very differently to Andy and to myself. So what do I do? Well, I think it's important to reset the scene when these prospects come back to you for this initial planning meeting, having gone through the discovery vetting. Just reset the scene with them, remembering these people are coming to you. They don't really yet understand what you do. They've listened to you and in the previous meeting, but they're coming to you. They're part baffled, they're part embarrassed because they don't quite know if they're going to understand what you're talking about. And they're probably partly terrified that if the graph or the cash flow looks bad, what are we going to do? So just be cognizant that these people don't they don't do our thing. They're not involved in what we do. They've got their own skill set and they're giving you their time and they're coming to you with all these fears. The first thing I do really is I do use the bucket in the discovery meeting to draw graphically what we do for people, and I will revisit the bucket and I will put that up on the screen like Andy. I do all of my annual planning meetings now and initial planning meetings through Zoom. I will bring the bucket up on the screen and I'll walk them through it again, because what I want to do is link the bucket to the cash flow. I want them to see the connection between it. So when I do, and again, I like Andy, I use Voyant, and I'm competent, very competent at Voyant. And the first graph I will bring up is the expenditure question there, the expenditure graph rather, the cost. But just to go but push back a bit of what Andy does, I do build the initial base plan myself. I want to be totally comfortable with it and where the clients are going to be if they do nothing. If the status quo remains, where are they going to be in 10, 20, 30 years? I don't want to discover that during the clients. In the planning meeting, certainly when the clients start asking questions, then we do the what ifs together. Well, what if we do this? What if we do that? But the base plan I have built already. And I should have said this at the outset. I encourage the clients to leap in. I know then they don't understand. So I say to them, if I start using jargon or I say something that's wrong, or I've just got it, you don't understand. I don't want you sitting there suffering and feeling embarrassed not to ask. You must interject, raise your hand and say, Lincoln, you cretin, you've got that completely wrong, or we just don't understand, okay? Because I don't want you to feel embarrassed about not speaking up. It's your time, please speak up. So the first graph that I'll bring up is the expenditure graph. It shows all red. Okay, and I say, okay, remember on your bucket there were 3 or 4 taps leaking money out of your bucket? Well, that is it here. This red is the year-on-year outflows from your bucket. Now we're going to add everything back in, all the incomes and future savings. So I walk them through it, but I try and do it at my own pace, or rather, I try and do it at a pace that I think is aligned with the client's ability to soak it up. The other really important thing is to get the clients to buy into the data. I do run through the data as well before the first graph is brought up. I will just get them to agree the data. And I don't go, if they've got 5 pension plans, I don't put 5 individual, I'll put them into one pension plan on the software and show them. We've just put it, if they've got 6 savings accounts, you do it as one savings account, right? Keep it simple, stupid. But I do get the clients to buy in on the data because I think that's really important, because if they agree with what's gone into the plan, they cannot disagree with the outcomes from the plan. It's just mathematics. So you have to get them to buy into the data, because then they're buying into the outcomes you're going to show them through the graphs. The meetings, typically last. The planning meetings it depends how involved they get, how many what ifs. It can be an hour, it can be up to 2 hours. But it is collaborative. Again, the planning meeting is the plan. The financial planner becomes the plan, because they build up trust. They listen to you and they trust you. And in the end, they don't always get what you do. They don't always understand what you're saying, but they believe you because it's you saying it. And that comes over time. That's how I run through my planning meetings. At the end, we'll agree some strategies. Okay, looks like you're going to run out of money, way earlier than you thought, but you've got surplus income here. You agree you can afford to invest this for your future selves. I'll follow up with some recommendations, but for the meantime, I think we should be doing X, Y, and Z. Simple, high-level stuff. Meeting is pretty much over, but I do revolve around the planning software. The cash flow is integral. The cash flow is the financial plan. You can dress it up in whatever things. I don't print anything off afterwards. I don't give them reams of paper to look at. It's the planning meeting is where the magic happens. And I am very conversant with the software. But I know that other people like to maybe outsource the software part to an assistant, to a power planner, what have you. But I'm with Andy. I like focusing on the client and listening to what they're saying and looking at them and picking up the cues. But B, also having that other part of my tiny brain thinking, okay, I know where in the software how we're going to address this issue, and because I don't want to look unprofessional when I'm using the software. To me, it matters that I look in control of the software. So being an OCD control freak like my young Padawan heart, that matters to me. Which one of you and which one of Mr. Smith and Mr. Widger wants to go next?
I'll go now before I forget. I've got things in my mind. If I don't get them out, I'll forget about it. I'm going to, and both excellent. I guess we're all doing a variation and it's in the sort of detail where there's some differences. I'm going to sort of take it up sort of a bit higher level and think back on a sort of strategic viewpoint. As we talked about on the last episode, which I saw a lot of feedback from this online, which is about this concept of critical non-essentials. So we're sweating the small stuff. We're looking at lots of small things, because I see this whole experience. This is where the rubber hits the road, this meeting. This is us where we're demonstrating our skills and our experience and the value that we can potentially bring to this family that hitherto they just weren't aware of. So I see this as a bit of theatre. I see it as a bit of art. And we sort of, we really think it through in a major way. So I try to also think about, or our team thinks, we reverse engineer the client experience. So I'm so glad that we're predominantly back in the office now, because we've then got control over the environment and we can sort of show we've got a beautiful office in London, and the whole thing needs to be part of the journey and the experience. And so small things. So when do you ideally have the meeting? What time of day? So it doesn't always work and people have got busy lives, but in an ideal world, we'll have the meeting at about 10 a.m. On an average day, because it will generally run for a couple of hours. And what I know is often when a husband and wife get together, maybe after they have a meeting, they go and grab a lunch together. They go and get a sandwich or something. And I know they'll be saying, what did you think about that? Any good? Was it nice? Was it good? So the time of day is important. What they're going to be doing afterwards, we want them to have a conversation, say, wow, that was amazing. That was much better than I expected. I thought it was going to be some dull conversation about pensions and investments. This was all about our family, our life, and our future. So knowing that what a good outcome looks like, we reverse engineer. So I might have mentioned before, in our office, which some of you have been to, we've got different rooms for different parts of the client journey. So I mentioned before, we've got a room which is called the lounge, and that's the discovery meeting place to have. We sit down, soft furnishings, low lighting, chit chat, like an upmarket coffee shop or something. But now we're getting into the business end. So now they're coming into a more traditional office with whiteboards and screens and all the rest of it. And I know that it is, I say this as a piece of theatre, because we've got, and the advisors and the team, that I see them, they're walking, they're up and down, they get on the whiteboard, they walk back, they're walking to the screen. Just that kind of that physical involvement and engagement. And I honestly think, of course, Zoom is far more efficient, but you lose that. You lose that artistry, that experience, that real life. I mean, I think for taking clients on as much as possible, do it in real life. Do it in your environment wherever you can. Future meetings, once the trust is built up, of course, you can do annual planning meetings and so on. And we should have another session in the future about the APM experience. couple of other just brief points. We send in advance a couple of videos, we explain our investment proposition. One of my colleagues, Graham, he's created several really good quality videos which explain, 3 minutes, 5 minutes, 7-minute versions, because it takes too much time to explain it in a meeting, and people haven't got all this sort of cognitive ability to process, index fund and factor-based investing. So we just send a couple of things. If they don't watch it, they don't watch it. We don't sort of not have the meeting if they don't. We name everything. So all the things. So this meeting is not called a strategy meeting, which is generic. It's called a blueprint. So everyone knows if you're building a house, you hire an architect and they design a blueprint. It doesn't tell you what color the tiles are in the bathroom, but it tells you how many bedrooms it has, whether you're south facing or north facing or whatever, which is what this is all about. We're not going into the granular detail. It's high level stuff. In terms of the actual work, we follow Nick Lincoln's approach in terms of we build the initial model based on the information that we've had. And then in real time, we'll adjust it. Is this right? Is this correct? And you do a number of what ifs, of course. That's where the magic is. What if you did retire 5 years early? What if you did give your kids additional money, etc.? And I think that is so important. I've seen other people who kind of have a pre-packed presentation. Here it is, almost like a PDF. This is and that just doesn't work. It's very interactive and also shows that it's up to them. You decide what life you want to live. You tell me, and we'll see if the numbers stack up. So it's a really live and interactive situation. The only other thing I'll say is on the basis that we really think through, because if these meetings, and they do generally last 2 hours, we'll have it automatically. One of the other members of the team, you're usually two people, an advisor and an associate, which in all money is a paraplanner. So we've got two people in the room because it's quite difficult, as someone else has said, to manage the client, the conversations, the tech, if it's just one person doing it. So an advisor and a co-pilot, it works really well. And after about an hour, what we know is people will either want a comfort break or they might want to top up with a coffee or something. So someone gently knocks on the door after 60 minutes, pre-planned in advance, and says, you want to take a break now, or do you want another coffee? And people think this is slick. It looks good, well thought through and organized. That's kind of it. That's it.
Grab yourself a drink, a very long drink. It's story time with Alan Smith.
That's what people think after the 60 minutes is up. That's when they need their first.
Exactly right. Yeah. And now you can talk.
Yeah. No, that's fine. Thank you for that, Alan. Carl, you've been very patient, my friend. Talk us through the Metis Norway approach to the, whatever you want to call it, first cash flow meeting.
We call it the Metis Life Plan. And I'm minded to remember how I came upon cash flow modeling. I met Andy Hart first, then I met Nick Lincoln, and then I met Alan Smith. And you've all clearly copied what we've done, right? Because I'm listening to how you all do.
There's nothing new under the sun, meetings, my friend.
Yeah, but it's funny how we've evolved, and I think we're big and bold enough now to be making some decisions ourselves. But it's definitely has been highly influenced by you three boys. We call it the Metis Life Plan meeting. I'm smiling. Alan says theatre. You boys have heard me saying I call it a one-act play. And it's really important for us now that we have kind of more private client managers or financial advisors, that everyone knows how the one act play goes. So every client, of course, people bring their own style to it, but every meeting is broadly the same. We have two people in the meeting, always private client manager. So for you boys, financial advisor, and financial planner. So for you boys, paraplanner. We know exactly who's doing what in the meeting. We'll never, ever have a Metis Life Plan meeting before someone has completed the getting to know you questionnaire. So we're just not doing it. Therefore, we have the base plan built. We also probably have a couple of scenarios built as well. Okay. As to, well, here's some quick wins as to, what we think you should do. And here's the impact that it has in your plan. I won't go into the detail of, Andy has done it really well in terms of the black line and the red and the shortfall and all that. Obviously, we build it out. We're using Voyant Go now. I thought the previous version of Voyant was better for the actual Metis Life Plan meetings, being honest, but we are where we are. So the financial planner will stand up. We'll start the meeting, by the way, by saying, what do you want to get out of this meeting? So to reiterate, right? Because no matter what they say, we're going to have it covered in the Metis Life Plan meeting. So we're just going to make sure that we're talking to the client. So the financial planner will stand up and go through the dashboard. So basically, we're just asking them just to reconfirm everything that they've already told us. I think this is almost designed to bring down any barriers or to bring the comfort levels to a certain level. So people are kind of going, okay, these people have listened and this is my plan. It's bespoke and it's only to us. Once we do that, then we start getting into the base plan. So here's exactly what you've told us. Here's what the pictures, and we tell them it's all pictures from now on, and pictures and graphs. And, I believe, like Alan said, having the two people in the room allows, to check body language, to make sure if someone is looking uncomfortable or if someone gives you the, I have no idea, but kind of I'm afraid to ask, you're able to go back and spot it and say, okay, let's, is everything okay on that? I think, like Andy said, the timeline, whilst we don't necessarily, Andy, dwell on that page, we do talk about goals, dreams, and aspirations, and keep trying to get people to, because almost always in the getting to know you, we don't have, any big goals, dreams, and aspirations. We spoke about that the last day. You can't on a form, build trust with someone for them to tell you their deepest desires. But we do start talking about, let's, if you want to buy a yacht, or if you want to have a villa in the south of France, let's just dream big here and let's just see, can it be done? And that encourages people to, start saying, oh, what if, could you do this? Could you do that? And the financial planner can obviously live build scenarios then. So I think we've got it. We're pretty slick at it now. Interestingly, guys, ours would last, an hour and a bit, maximum an hour and a half. And I would challenge the private client managers, and have done. If it's going beyond that, I think it's too long, because this is a process. It's not a one hit and done. So if it's going on too long, I think you probably could, be giving too much information and bewildering people with all of the stuff that you're going through. Yeah. Once the meeting is done, we'll I suppose the big focus on the meeting is, are we going to be okay? So that's where we're trying to get to. So if we can get there in the base plan, then fantastic. And we do often now, right, with the types of clients we're getting, but oftentimes we can't, right? So we're trying to get to, are we okay? And then it's like the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Then where do we go after that? Dreams, goals, aspirations, then legacy stuff and whatever. So depending on the circumstance, we'll decide on where we want to go. But being conscious of not trying to do too much in the first meeting, because we're trying to partner with people over a very long period of time. And we would have been guilty of that before, and we have evolved and we've developed the process along the way. Once the meeting is finished, then we'll do one of two things. Immediately afterwards, we will either record a video so that the clients will have a Vimeo with the advisor, the private client manager, saying, listen, thanks, fantastic to see you. Here's the main themes of what we discussed, and here are what we've agreed are the next steps. We'll either do that or we'll do a summary email, but the summary email has to be out within 24 hours. If we do the Vimeo, we'll try and get that out same day. And the Vimeo, the video summary of the meeting is super impactful, because it gives some people something almost by the time they get home, they have it. Number one. And number two, they'll forget. We know this stuff, but they'll forget. And the wow moment of, when you've built the plan and built some scenarios and we're all going to be good. And like everyone is, oh, this is amazing. And I've never had this experience before, because the last time I went into a financial advisor's office, he was telling me about which pension fund was the best. All right. So this is like, wow, this is incredible stuff. And it is mind blowing. And I remember myself seeing it for the first few times. And I keep on trying to talk to, the team here in Metis to say, this is adding massive value. And this is nothing that any of our clients, our prospective clients who are coming in have experienced before. So I think that's really important. I think then if there's something like, we've spoken about this before, a big dream is to go and see my daughter who's emigrated to Australia. Well, we'll get them a book on Australia or something like that, just to say again, this is more reiteration of we're listening. This is bespoke to you. We know exactly what you want to do. And that's going to drive any of the recommendations that we do. So that's the following step is then after that, and we will say it in our summary email or in our video. The next step is for us to issue some recommendations as to financial products or what it might be. We might talk in more detail about those in another episode, but in that, the recommendations, they have to be XYZ pages long, but we will always do an executive summary. So look, that's a whistle-stop tour of something that we've put an enormous amount of thought and effort into. And if I can say two things, like people should focus on what Alan said, it's theatre. What we say, it's a one-act play. It's your chance to showcase the value that you add. And it's your chance also to make sure that the clients know that this is for you. We haven't just picked this off the shelf and, done a PDF. This is your plan for you to make sure that you can live the life that you want to lead.
Great stuff. I know in the chat that both Alan and Andy have got points to make. I just quickly, I use, like you, Carl, I send a very quick follow-up video. I do record the entire initial planning meeting for clients, but they might not want to wade through another hour being with me in the cloud. But I send through like a Loom video, 2 minutes with the graphs in the background, my head on one side, the graphs in the background, just to summarize what we just discussed. And you can embed that in the email. The clients get that email when they're back home. It's already sitting there for them just to recap what we've discussed. So we'll go first to Alan and then Andy with some points, and then I shall wrap up.
Yes, quick couple of points. First of all, going back to AI, you'll be able to record all these meetings and it will automatically create a summary of all the key points immediately in real time. That's for another time. Getting into the detail of these meetings and really trying to think about, as Carl has referred to, really from the client's perspective, we are kind of selling the invisible, aren't we? We're selling, as all this fluffy stuff, hopes, dreams, ambitions, etc. And how do you make manifest? How do you make that real? Yeah. So one of the things that we do, and this came from Michael Kitz's, and he wrote about this, and I put a link to this in the show notes, is you create a calendar for the client. This is what the next 12 months looks like. There's a lot of things to do. You've got to get organized, structured. We include things that you need to get. Are your wills up to date? It's all the legal aspects up to date. Are the kind of tax returns up to date? There'll be a range of just kind of dull but important things to get sorted that we can't do all in day one. So we'll share with them our projected next 12 months of relationship. That makes things visible. Okay, yes, I've been trying to sort that out for several years. Haven't done that. So 12 months from now, this will all be fixed. Absolutely. So we make that real. The other point I would say is, at some point you've got to explain what the cost of it is. Whatever your fee structure or model is, you've got to have a conversation around cost. What I have found in the past, often clients, particularly if they're coming, as you know, we deal with a number of people who have kind of sudden wealth, have sold a business, they've never really engaged with advisors much in the past, and they literally have no idea of what the costs are. I said to someone, true story, very short one, I said to prospective clients a few years ago, I said, just to understand what her perception of, do you have any idea of what the costs of wealth management, financial planning would be? And she said, no. She said, about 10%. And I said, 10% of what? Of the money?
You're in.
Yeah. I said, no, we'll do it for 9%. Sign here. I said, and it was just, again, it was another example of, and she was an amazing, outstanding entrepreneur. But I just realized that, and she thought it was 10% a year of her investments. I thought, well, 10 years from now, I've got all your money and you've got none. And so we build into our model it's kind of just price anchoring. We take some data that exists from the FCA produced this thing, the market average. We're not trying to position ourselves as a bucket shop or cheap, but just to give you a sense, we're there or thereabouts in terms of the costs. So people go, okay, and that's all they want to know about. So I'm not getting ripped off. I'm not paying, it's not for free, and it's not 10% a year. So I think that's quite important. And the last point I will say, just following up with Carl's, because tech makes this stuff so easy, we set after the meeting pretty much immediately, we do the same as you guys, we send a summary, and we send our digital proposal form, our doing business together document. And wherever possible, we'll personalize that to the extent of, because nowadays with Canva, you can do it in a second. If the client has said they're really interested in horse racing or sailing or rugby, we'll just put an image on the cover of this digital document because it takes a second. So it's another little tiny thing that they say, wow, that is a picture of this sailing yacht that I've always wanted to sail in or something. So it takes a second and it's pretty good. And then we set up a time because often people want 24 hours, 40 hours a week to reflect. Sometimes they're seeing other advisors, perfectly fine. But we'll agree a time when we can touch base and move on to the next stage. Over to you, Mr. Hart.
Okay, yeah, final couple of points. I think Carl alluded to it, but everybody uses cash flow planning, knows how this works. It's for the first time a client with a financial advisor has realized, oh my God, they are actually helping me plan decades ahead. So prior to this meeting, they've had meetings with financial advisors and they've never been able to see their future. Whereas when you get out something like Voyant and they're 60 and you're showing them up to 100, for the first time ever, they're like, okay, well, genuinely, this individual is actually helping me plan decades ahead. We're very, very future focused as financial advisors and our clients aren't. So it's just opening that sort of thought process with them that I think is important. Back to Alan's point, I mean, I sometimes say to clients, look, to get your financial house in order, we've got to do about 45 things and it's probably going to take a few years. I'm not going to overwhelm you with all that stuff initially. However, we're just going to do the big things first. Carl alluded to it as well. Like insurance might crop up in the meeting. I'll say, look, we're going to talk about insurance another time. We're just going to sort of build the high level plan here. So yeah, I don't want to get into the too nitty gritty too much. I mean, in these meetings, I'm in absolute flow. It's my most enjoyable part of this job is doing these meetings live with clients. I had a 3-hour meeting with a really, really complex client situation the other day. We both absolutely loved that he's really into this stuff and he seeks me out for this work. So yeah, that's that. A couple of other things. By the end of the meeting, the whiteboard has got pretty much everything sketched out. So I'll take a photo of the whiteboard, put it in the client file, and that's all good. I will touch upon it, which is what everyone's spoken about, Alan specifically, framing in these meetings, trying to keep it as simple as possible and repeatable with the client. So every year you come back to the same ways of explaining things. Like, this is your saving period of your life. You need to be saving during this day. This is your spending period of your life. This is your financial independence day. At the moment, you've got a bit of red in your plan. You're not getting over the financial finish line. Or actually, your plan's quite healthy. You are getting over the financial finish line. Yes, wording is very, very important. I think the next iteration in these meetings is going to be huge screens that are finally touch screen and really work. So we had massive TVs, then we had the thin TVs, then we had the light TVs, then we had curved TVs that didn't work. The next iteration of TVs that I'm sure Samsung and LG are rubbing their hands with is going to be enormous 85-inch TVs at a touchscreen. At the moment, they're just too expensive. At some point, they'll become reasonable, and a lot of financial advisors will have them in their room. That's it. Back to you, Lick.
Okay, thank you. Yes, Alan, I did have my finger poised over the ultra-crepidarian drop, and he just about stayed this side of megalomaniac.
You've not really? You've not played it for a while.
Yeah.
Everyone likes it.
Just to tie a bow on this, three final points from me. Thank you, guys, by the way. I mean, this is an absolute knowledge fest here, especially for younger advisors, I think, and I hope. Don't hold back when you build the financial plan. If the clients are saying, we want to buy a yacht, we want to do this, okay, knock all that stuff into the plan. Even if you know intuitively this is not going to be feasible, it's their plan. And if they need to scale it back, we scale it back during the planning meeting. We drop stuff out. But if they said they want to do this stuff, do it. Second point, and this is really important. I think this is something that younger advisors perhaps do feel a burden. At the end of the day, it's not your problem. If the graph is still showing red, they're still going to run out of money before they run out of life, and you've done everything possibly you can to do it, then it's over to them as adults. Don't make it it's not your mission on this earth to get the graph just showing blue, to get rid of the red. You're going to do everything you can to do it, but if it's still showing red, then they've got to grow up. And there are 4 variables. You either work longer, you earn more, you save more, or you spend less. And it's up to you, Mr. and Mrs. Client. Go away and think about it, because we've done all we can do. And the final thing, just out of interest, we barely focus on the actual investments in the initial planning meeting. Again, as younger advisors, you may feel you now need to talk about the investments that they're going to fuel the plan. I don't talk about it at all in the initial blueprint meeting, planning meeting, whatever you want to call it. That comes up at a later date. I bury it.
I do, Nick. I have a hidden page.
Yeah, that's why your meeting's gone for 3 hours.
I don't spend long on it. But it's I discuss the Maven Invest portfolios once we're looking at the numbers and the investments and pensions and stuff, because I believe that they, in that meeting, may wish to discuss that. So I don't want to be too evangelical about the financial plan. I want to bring in the investments, because we do look after clients their life savings. It is very important. But yeah, I don't dwell too much on it, but I do discuss it.
Okay. Well, there's no. It's interesting how we got different ways of doing it, and that's part of the joy of what we do and the joy of the four of us finding out how the other one of us do things wrong.
But
okay.
I think can I just before we jump on to the postie
obviously not postie.
Go on, Carl.
Go.
I think the point here is there is no ideal way. There is the way that works for you and that you found works best for the clients, and it will evolve, and don't be afraid to change it, because sometimes you can think that, oh yeah, this is absolutely perfect. Like, we're always trying to evolve ours. We're actually considering, we don't do the investment chat at the moment, but we have recently been kind of asked to, can we bring that in? So we're trying to maybe say, okay, can we bring in maybe 2 or 3 slides just to talk about that? Or maybe we do send out some stuff, beforehand, like Alan says, about the investment philosophy. So, I do what works for you. But and then back to Andy just said, it's what he loves doing best. I stopped doing it, guys. You guys know this, right? And I'm back in doing it this year. I just love it. It is the part of the business that I get up, and if I know I am presenting a Metis life plan on a particular morning, I am buzzing coming into work. I love doing it because I really, really, really feel honestly, that we are doing really important work and we're adding huge value. So if I have a new couple coming in, I'm like, oh my God, we're actually going to change some lives here today. That might sound like a ridiculous statement.
No,
I believe
not
it.
Not at all. I mean, imagine people who don't do this as their integral offering and just doing it the old way. It's just like, wow.
I'd say it's 95%.
Okay, thank you.
95% of advisors, Nick. 95% of advisors
probably
don't. And that statistic, you're basing that on what?
Up.
What?
I've just
what
made
data?
it up from my 12 years of traveling the country and training advisors.
Because he's an ultra-crepidarian.
Probably
97% of what Andy Hart says is made up.
Stats are made up on the go. Yeah, play it. Fucking hell, play it.
Andy, the ultra-crepidarian Andy. He knows about everything, Andy. Can't be told anything. His name is Andrew Hart. Andrew Hart!
Andrew, our dear friend Andrew has a fantastic way of making up statistics, and I'm always challenging him on it.
Andy.
But I love him.
No, I will say one thing. I'm sure 80% of the Trappists do this, though this is the, 5% I'm talking about. But I think generally in the wider market, most don't. Certainly investment managers.
No, it's 78%.
80 and 5%. They're not. The
Right.
Belt
Belt up, you lot.
100%. What he says is nonsense.
Just to close on this,
shouting,
just so
Alan,
you know,
stop
dear
shouting.
Trappists, two-thirds of the stats we say on the show are made up. Okay, can we go back, because the bloody the postie's been. Oh, that's the wrong one, isn't it? That's good. Postie's at the front door. She's still at the front door, and she's got the she's got the bulging sack of Trappist questions as ever. If you've got a question to pose to us, please do send them in. There's the pinned tweet at Advisor Podcast. You click on there and you can submit your questions. And there's also the link in the so-called show notes with all the Trappist questions in, which could be fired in there. So the first question off the board. Let's have a look at this. This is from Gavin Burton. He loves the long ones. Misses. His Twitter handle is @Burtong1. Recently I listened to Brett Davidson on Retirementals, and he expressed his dislike for the vertically integrated model. I think he is naive. He's a big guy, Brett Davidson. I think he is naive and looking at the world from inside his own tin. He argued that the advice piece in a restricted model can be delivered at a cheap cost because the investment piece is loaded and they can sell their own shit. His words. Apologies, dear Trappists. Well, having worked for a leading IFA firm in the northeast of England, I dispute this. They just sold their own shit too. I now work for a restricted advice firm who manage money in a way that makes my old firm look like amateurs. Alan recently said that simplicity and vanilla flavour is the client's friend. The portfolio is what powers the client's future. What cannot be sold for the client by the Vanguard lifestyle funds, ? Where do you go with the independence argument then? Selling your own SHIT is a process-driven, cost-efficient model with lifestyle planning at the forefront. That seems pretty good to me. Thank you for that. War and Peace, Gavin Burton. Well, we have talked about this was the last episode of the one before. I think advisors, IFAs are all. It might not be our nomenclature, but in practice, we are restricted, right? We all tend to have one or two platforms, and we all know which funds clients are going to go into if the clients are suitable for us. So I agree. I agree with you, really. Any thoughts on that?
In the words of Alan Smith, what is the question?
Yeah. That's what I was thinking.
The question is a restricted model. There's nothing wrong with the restricted model if you put lifestyle financial planning at the forefront of it.
Okay.
We did. As always, these things are nuanced, right? It depends. You can interpret that point or question in several ways. What we're talking about, there are some firms which are vertically integrated who take a significant margin on the investment management piece. That's the model. So those are organizations which are they're businesses first, and then they work out what they're doing. They say, how can we make a significant margin and profit on this? And there's the various on what the experts call the value chain. So there is platforms, there's investment management, and there's the planning experience. We know where the real value lies of all those things, and the rest, frankly, are commodities to be, choose whatever one you want and justify it. So that, to me, there's the restricted versus independent. We have a view. It doesn't really matter, honestly. As we all know, there are bad independents, there are great restricteds. Yeah. I think what the overriding thing is the client. Is there a cross subsidy? Is the client paying a huge premium? I mean, just a 10 times premium, which is literally true. I can buy a Vanguard fund for 20 basis points, and I might pay 200 basis points elsewhere. And most of that is going back to the vertically integrated firm. So is that good? Is that justified? My opinion would be no. I would rather speak to whether it's an independent or restricted firm who uses sensible, low-cost, evidence-based investment offerings. And they're held together on a simple, effective administration platform, but they get outstanding world-class behavioral coaching, investment management, all the other stuff that we us do. So, moot point, really.
Final point Andy. On this: people don't want cheap; they want safe. Safe is how they deem it. Move on.
You're conflating.
Yeah, anyway, that's conflating. Right. Next question is from... Who's this from? Toby Evans, who's on Twitter as @TobiasEvans1, numeral 1. Do any of you... This is a really good question. Do any of you pay for an independent financial planner to hold you to account on your own financial plan? If not, what strategies do you employ to protect yourself and natural human behaviours and biases to avoid straying from the plan? If you do, if you do outsource, how do you choose who, and how do you reconcile getting sufficient value when they're likely to be telling you what you already know? Okay, I'll quickly kick off. I think Alan's got a different view on this, maybe Carl. I have a high internal locus of control. I'm quite happy to be my own financial planner and to hold myself to account. I don't need somebody else telling me what I already know. Alan?
You're right. It depends. The most important part of all this, as we know, is behavior, is behaving ourselves around our own. We can tell our clients all day long, do we always do it ourselves? I have hired a financial planner in the past, and I recommend it. But the real thing I want to hire a financial planner for is the talking me off the cliff edge, because I'm human like anyone else. And every now and again, I am extremely capable of making poor financial decisions in the short term. I honestly think for people like us, your strongest body armor is a group like this, because I know that we talk about this, and I will say in confidence, in behind closed doors, I'm thinking of doing this, and I'll be coached and advised not to do it. Do I need to hire a full-time financial planner to do that? Not necessarily, possibly, but I would dip in and out of those conversations anytime I'm facing a significant decision. If I've got a group of well-intentioned, high-quality friends, we'll have an intelligent debate about these things. So that's my personal experience.
Okay, Andy, and then Carl.
Well, I'm a financial robot and make perfect decisions in everything I do in life. Joke. I was divorced at 40.
I've already played your drop, so
all the plans go out the window. No, I don't. I was actually updating my financial plan last night, live and voyant. I love doing it. That's all I do. I've got my own financial plan. I invest the exact same way as I tell my clients. I've got a sounding board of people to discuss things that I'm going to be doing. This group included. But no, I don't employ a separate financial advisor. I have worked for other financial advisors on projects for them, usually when they're selling their business, they want to work out if they've got enough. I understand how other financial advisors employ other financial advisors because I'm on the receiving end of that, but no, I don't do it myself. Carl?
My colleague Cian Callahan does my plan, and he's always telling me that I'm going to be working till about 85.
I guess
unless something changes.
Cian's had quite a bit of work to do recently.
Moving swiftly along.
Okay, that's great. Thank you, Trappist. Thank you, Trappist, for your questions. That's always good fun. Listen, we're at an hour and 10 minutes. For Christ's sake, let's get on with it. Wow. Okay, Culture Corner. I shall kick off firstly. We had a long rambling question from one of the Trappists in a previous episode, obviously, because it couldn't be in a future episode, about the dangers of everyone going to indexing. Wouldn't that distort the market and make it very difficult to actually you wouldn't have an efficient market? The Rational Reminder podcast, episode 252, the two very polite, pleasant Canadian chaps. They have Burton McKeel on the show. If you don't know who he is, look him up. If you do know who he is, you know who he is. And at 1 hour 14 minutes, they asked this question to Burton, and he says, "Well, it'll never happen. There'll never be a total index market, and if it ever gets close to it, then you'll see people will find ways to identify value and value gaps in that." So I would listen to that. That's in the so-called show notes, of course, as are all the Culture Corners. Mr. Smith, Emad Mostak.
That's a name to conjure with. You'll be hearing more about this guy in the future. Sorry to harp on about it. I'll try not to speak about it in the next episode. But Emad Mostak is a London-based AI. He's one of the leading AI people in the world. He was interviewed very recently. Danny in the Valley is a podcast. It's the Times tech correspondent. The guy lives in San Francisco, and he's got a really interesting podcast all about tech innovation and what happens. And he interviewed quite recently this guy, Emad Mostak. And honestly, I just think it's mind-blowing, the stuff which is already here.
No way.
and I mean, just listen, spend 1 hour listening to that podcast, and you will be amazed. Well worth your time. That was it.
Okay, lovely. Thank you. Mr. Hart, this Christ on a bike. IKEA online wardrobe service.
let me do it myself, Nick. Going back to a previous point, Nick.
This better be good.
You use some jargon, Nick. Do you want to share with the listeners what an internal locus of control is, please?
No, they've got Google for that, mate. Crack on.
Okay. First up, following on from my new change of life, divorce, etc. I'm moving into a new place, and I'd used the IKEA online wardrobe help thing. It was fantastic. I mean, there's nothing worse than me schlepping down to Wembley, walking around the IKEA store, sitting down with somebody who doesn't want to be there, and designing my wardrobe. So they have an online service. I recommend that you do it. It's like Zoom. They've got great software. They build it out. They tell you.
You on the wrong? You might be on the wrong podcast. I know you've got a couple of other podcasts ending. Anyway, what the hell are you talking about?
If you need to design wardrobes, use the IKEA.
If you get divorced and you move house,
it's just the same sort of thing. All right, moving on.
Mother
from that.
of sweet as divine Jesus Christ.
Okay,
Nick, can you get Carl's drop in, please, for the end of the show? Get Carl's drop in for the end of the show.
Yeah, don't worry, it's coming.
The final, my final, somewhat more useful point. So I will get an advisor that says to me, Andy, thank God you told me about IKEA online wardrobes. It saved me a shed load of time, effort, and hassle. I will guarantee that when I don't come back,
you will, and you'll share it with us then in the WhatsApp group, and none of us will care again.
I fucking will. Right. So the final point.
That's. I'd like to apologise. I'd like to apologise to my kids and my mum for the profanity.
That is the second F-bomb I've got on this show, by the way. And Nick, your coughing this episode has been atrocious. Right, moving on. My final point. So everyone asks me, or people often ask me what mics I use. So I've got a new mic for this show. So if this sounds all right.
People often ask you. No one's ever asked you.
Alan, you must get it as well, being a fellow amateur podcaster. So anyway, this new mic I'm talking on is called the Rode NT USB Versatile Studio Quality mic. It's a link in the show notes. It's small, it's high quality. It just connects to your computer via USB. If you're in the market for a mic, which a lot of you are, then do check out the so-called show notes. That's it. Over to Chairman.
Okay, great stuff. Thank you, Andy. Carl, disrupting time.
Yeah, so I mentioned Sinead O'Sullivan's The Context, the online book club. So the Disrupting Time is the story about how Swiss watches became best in class, and it's about industrial espionage in the late 1800s. Wow. That sounds like a pretty boring book. It is an amazing book. I highly, highly recommend it to everybody. So, and my second Culture Corner piece, as I embark on a bucket list holiday.
Hilarious.
And they'll also see that I was deeply uncomfortable with the content of some of today's podcast, owing to the Irish versus UK cultural differences. I have a song for everyone to listen to, and it's The End Is Nigh by Bell X1. And it's a song about, the song speaks for itself, but it's about who will make the cut when your time is up. So for me, it's so busy at the moment. Life is just busy. Life is just crazy. And I'm sure it's the same for everyone. I know it's the same for everyone because everyone tells me it is. And sometimes you got to stop and you got to say, okay, what's really important? And it's so easy to lose the focus on that. And we often remind each other about this, don't we? And I'm always saying it. And the reason I'm always saying it, they're notes to self. And the end is nigh. Who will make the cut when your time is up? There's a line in it that says, these moments are fleeting as they are pure. And a 2-week holiday, bucket list holiday with my kids, that's going to be a fleeting moment in the overall scheme of things for everybody, but I intend to make it memorable. And I would urge everyone listen to the song and then have a little walk and talk to yourself about what really matters in life.
That's you know what, Carl? That's why you're almost a valuable member of this team. That is
yes, Carl. That's amazing. But have you ever used the IKEA online wardrobe service?
It will change your life.
Bell-X. You know what that sounds like?
Right, Bell-X1. They're an amazing Irish band, but the song.
Well, just listen to the
song.
album.
There's a link to it in the show.
Carl.
Obviously. Keep going.
Okay, all right. Enough. God, it's like herding cats today, isn't it? Right, 1 hour, 17 minutes in. I think we can draw a line under this. Carl, have a great trip. Look forward to catching up with you in 2 episodes' time. Dear Trappists, if you like the show, please leave a review on iTunes. 6 out of 5 stars. You can also do the same. You can watch us, God forbid, on YouTube. We have people who aren't involved in financial services who actually watch this drivel and somehow get enjoyment out of it. Carl, you're trying to say something behind me. Go on, say it.
Best of luck, Amelia. I know Amelia's going to be absolutely brilliant and will be way better than me. And best of luck to everyone. And see you all when I get back.
She might be a
all right, let's go then. All right.
Yeah, let's
Bye.
go. Yeah.
Bye.